Good morning and welcome to this panel discussion on the revised Assistant Accountant Level 3 standard. My name's Tim Sutcliffe and I'm delighted that we are joined this morning by a panel of experts from AAT, Grant Thornton and from Babington. So the aim of the session today is to explore the updates that have been made to the standard and to get an understanding of the impact that this will have on apprentices, employers and training providers who are delivering the standard. So it'd be great to hear from you during this discussion. So please do pop your messages into the chat as we go along. We have got a number of people on here, so it'd be useful if perhaps people just keep themselves on mute during the session. But please do turn your cameras on and join us. So I'm going to start by outlining the headline of the revisions, and then we'll jump straight into the discussion. But before we get started, perhaps let's just spend a few moments getting to know our panel with some introductions. Zoe, perhaps you'd like to go first.
Yeah, thank you. So my name's Zoe Smith. I'm a regional account manager for the AAT. And as part of my role, I supported the Trailblazer group that was looking at the standard and looking at how it was reviewed. And so I supported the employers that came together along with IFAT in order to make those changes.
Great, thanks, Zoe. Ruth?
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Ruth Walsh and I work with Grant Thornton. I am director within our people advisory practice, and I focus primarily on supporting our clients with anything to do with their talent and skills and their people agenda in general.
Great, thanks, Ruth. And finally, Amy.
Morning, everybody. So my name's Amy Westall. I'm our head of delivery here at Babington. I've been in the industry over 8.5 years now, and my primary role is to oversee the successful delivery of our accountancy programmes here, all the way through from level 3 up to level 7.
Great, thank you very much, Amy. Could you pop the next slide on, Martin? Yeah, there we go. Great, thanks very much. So, as I say, the aim of the discussion today is to explore the changes to the revised Assistant Accountant Level 3 standard and think about how that's going to impact on the delivery and the work that the apprentices and, of course, the employers do together. There are a number of changes to this standard, and I thought it would be useful just to start by looking at some of the big headlines to make sure we're all aware of some of the changes that are being made. So, first of all, we've got revised knowledge, skills and behaviours. So not a huge surprise to see this is it. The knowledge, skills and behaviours, the learning outcomes that make up the apprenticeship. There have been some revision to those, so we will explore that. We see the introduction of duties into the assessment plan. So this idea that there are certain tasks that apprentices should be involved with and should be able to evidence as part of the programme. We've got revisions to the endpoint assessment. So as we know, all apprenticeships have an endpoint assessment. They are externally marked and graded, and we have revisions to the EPA to explore. The AAT Level 3 qualification is now mandated as part of the apprenticeship, and we have an increase in the funding band from 8,000 to 12,000. So those are our main revisions that we're going to concentrate on. And I suppose best place to start, perhaps, Zoe, is what prompted the revision of the Assistant Accountant Level 3 standard, and what were the key objectives and goals behind this?
So I think the original date that this accountant was actually launched is September 2016. So it's been a number of years that we've had it that's been running successfully. But all standards have to be revised every 5 to 6 years just to make sure that they remain fit for purpose and they still reflect what's required by the employers. So the Trailblazer group was reconvened, and one of the things that they were sort of tasked with doing is looking through the knowledge, skills and behaviours and making sure that actually they reflected still what the role of an assistant accountant was doing, just so that every apprentice that gets registered makes sure that they are getting the appropriate training and development so that it can be effective in their role as an assistant accountant. And over the last 7 years, we have seen lots of changes. There's been emerging technologies, changes in the way that we work. So it was important for these changes, these knowledge, skills and behaviours to be looked at to reflect what has happened in the industry. And another one of the objectives that was set, as you mentioned, is about the funding band. You know, in order to reflect inflation, the additional costs that are involved, just to ensure that the apprenticeship standard remains viable to be able to provide a high quality apprenticeship programme, so that the increase in funding band was an important one for us to look at. And in addition to that, because the assistant accountant was one of the very first standards that was written right at the very beginning, although the employer groups were working with IFATE in the way that they wrote it, and they had sort of a guidance of what was to be included, there was no set structure. And so different groups would go off and write in different ways about different things, different approaches. And IFATE, since the original assistant accountant was published, has brought out templates so that there's a set structure to the standard and the assessment plan. It's in the form of a template. So it's all very consistent language across all of the apprenticeship standards. So we needed to ensure that we were using the new standards, so the new templates that were there with that specific IFATE language that's been set. And one of the key changes as well is the fact that duties is within that structure. So having set duties, which the original plan didn't have, and so bringing that in was an important thing to be added as well.
Great. Okay, so apprenticeship standards, when they were originally introduced, we're kind of sort of 5 or 6 years down the line now. So yeah, if we think of how the world has changed in those years, an awful lot has happened, hasn't it? So not just bringing up to date in terms of the job role, but how people learn and how people study, but then also that idea that, you know, again, when apprenticeship standards were introduced, we were all heading into a brave new world. We've all learned an awful lot since then, and there's now, yeah, perhaps some kind of set guidelines that employers are working to when they write these standards. Okay, interesting. Okay, and then the introduction of AAT level 3 as a mandated qualification. I mean, this seems like a huge step forward. What will this mean for apprentices and employers?
I think just having it within there just ensures that there is that professional qualification for all of them, so that alongside their assistant accountant apprenticeship certificate, they know they're definitely going to get that professional qualification as well. So it provides that consistency for attainment for every apprentice who's on the standard, because there were various approaches to it. For employers, I think it gives them that added insurance, reassurance that their trainees are getting that, you know, industry recognised qualification within it. And from a practical point of view, because of the fact that the qualification is mandated, it means from an employer's perspective, they don't have to pay the registration fees or the first sitting of the exam fees, because the funding band increase covers that. With it being a mandated qualification, then that's an eligible cost. So no question, there's an eligible cost for that. So the registration of the AAT exam and the first sitting of the assessments are covered. But one of the things that also is kind of ties in really nicely with this is at AAT, we updated our qualification in September 22. So we made significant changes to the syllabus, and that was all with a lot of guidance and research that we did, speaking to over 530 employers and getting their input about what they wanted to see within the qualification, what types of skills, what focus, in addition to, you know, knowing that we always teach finance and, you know, management accounting, financial accounting, taxation, but what were the other skills that were important, bearing in mind the impact of technology on accounting professions and the way that the, you know, the professional it's changing. And so we'd updated our qualification to reflect these additional skills that were needed. And so it was quite a significant change. So having that qualification, which ties in so well with the specific knowledge, skills and behaviours that the employers had already identified as being important, means that it just kind of goes really well hand in hand to ensure that they've got those additional skills to be really effective of the job they're doing. You know, it was things like analytical skills, advisory skills, because there's so much automation that is done. It gives the opportunity for apprentices to be able to be looking at how they support their clients, how they communicate to their clients, and then having a greater understanding of emerging technologies around things like cybersecurity and big data and making tax digital. So we'd already made those amendments to the qualification, so that then feeds in and aligns really nicely by having that qualification mandated alongside the knowledge, skills and behaviours.
Okay, so there's lots of really great advantages then, isn't there, to having this mandated qualification? Not only have we therefore, you know, we've got experts helping to drive the content and the quality of what is in the standard, but there's advantages to employers as well, because if the exam and membership fees are included within the funding band, then suddenly, you know, you're not having to go and say, okay, well, I need to find budget from elsewhere to pay for exams and membership fees and things like that. So yeah, it really does sound really positive. Ruth, from an employer's perspective, how do you think employers feel about that increase?
Yeah, well, you know, just to share a little bit of background, actually, for anyone that is maybe not familiar with Grant Thornton, we are the 5th largest accountancy and professional services firm in the world, about 6 here in the UK, and we have 5,000 people here in the UK. About 20% of our workforce is doing an apprenticeship of one type or another, and you know, for us, the level 3 is certainly very important. I very much welcomed with glee, with joy, you know, all the different the different improvements. You talked there around the various approaches, so that there is in the industry, and actually having that consistency across the standard is really important. And we are heavily involved in the trailblazing group for the standard. So for us, you know, that consistency was key. In terms of the funding band raises, I think I very much welcome that from a training provider's perspective. As you say, it hasn't been reviewed since 2016, and actually, you know, employers, rightly so, are getting more and more demanding in terms of the sort of service that you need and that you deserve for the people that you are, you know, for your people, in your organization, especially anyone that has an early careers training program, or not, even if you have ones or twos. There are early careers, there are junior apprentices that are coming in, often new to the organization, but definitely, or in most cases, fairly new to accountancy. So actually, it allows, from my perspective, the increasing funding bands allows the training providers to invest more in the right resources, in the right tutors, the skills coaches, platforms, and essentially support forums to provide that support to the learners, to the apprentices, especially around the communities and the, you know, perhaps a little bit of coming back face to face. This particular group, I think, what we're seeing is that they need it more so than perhaps other more independent, experienced apprentices. You know, is that face to face, that sense of community building. So I think anything that allows the training providers to think creatively and have you know, the ability to expand in that area, I think is very welcome from my perspective.
Yeah, great. So along with that kind of mandation of the AAT qualification, which drives quality, the increase in the funding band, certainly from your point of view, is that it will do that as well. Again, if we think, you know, these funding band prices were set in 2018 or 2017, yeah, what the world looks like now, as we've said, is very different. So yeah, it kind of opens it up, doesn't it, for providers to be able to make the investment that we need in, you know, the resources, the people that we're using to deliver. Okay, great. Okay, Amy, so we're hearing that there are lots of changes. I just kind of want to think about the new competencies and skills as part of the new knowledge, skills and behaviours that have been revised as part of the standard.
Yeah,
how are Babington preparing for that?
Yeah, Zoe touched on those new behaviours and skills really nicely, actually, and talking about, the introduction of some of the data analytics. As you said, you know, the world has changed massively over the past 5 or 6 years in how we use those new technologies. So they have become part of the revised standards as well. Some of the other things that kind of link into that is that we've seen the introduction in the new revised standard of knowledge and skills and behaviour around the use of other digital technologies such as social media. So apprentices will now be expected to kind of talk about and demonstrate how we use digital platforms to communicate with our clients, and understand the risks and benefits of doing so, because there are arguments on both sides for that. The other one that ourselves and AAT are excited to see included in there links into what we were talking about earlier. You know, the world has changed and the way that we work with each other has changed. So there's also been an inclusion of diversity and inclusion built into the new standard. So the apprentices will be expected to gain knowledge on the approaches to diversity and inclusion and cultural awareness, and have an understanding about how that impacts their behaviour within the workplace, whether that's with their colleagues or with the clients that they're working with, and demonstrate how they build collaborative relationships in the workplace, and how diversity and inclusion is so important to doing so in an ever-changing world. In terms about how we've prepared for that as Babington, we have made sure that our delivery teams are fully aware of all the changes that are going to happen, and they've undertaken a number of training sessions around this to make sure that they're fully up to date. The things around diversity and inclusion and online awareness are something that we have quite a focus on here anyway. So it's something that our coaches are constantly developing on and understanding those topics. So that's nothing new. And we have regular newsletters, for example, that we share with our apprentices that also talk about those particular topics. The delivery team also attended training sessions with our specialist performance coach, who we have working alongside our delivery teams, to make sure that everybody understands the changes, how we're going to go and teach that out to our apprentices, and what we expect to see in return in terms of how do we approach that, what evidence do we expect to see, and how do we naturally embed these new knowledge, skills and behaviours within our delivery. So the use of our specialised performance coach has been absolutely key in making sure that we roll this out in the correct way, and that we do a great job in doing so.
Brilliant. It sounds like you've been really busy, Amy.
We have, yes.
And then in terms of just thinking about, obviously, Zoe mentioned that there was the new AAT syllabus last year, and that's obviously driven a lot of the changes with the knowledge. And we had a kind of like a full reboot of our AAT program last year, didn't we? So I don't know if you want to just kind of run through the types of things that we did then.
Sorry, Tim, was that to me or Amy?
Oh, sorry, that was to Amy, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Apologies, I think I've just frozen. Can you repeat the question, Tim?
Yeah, sorry, Amy, I was just saying,
back.
so we had a new syllabus last year, and during which we made a number of changes to our delivery for the actual technical qualification, didn't we? So I don't know if it's just kind of worth running through what our delivery for the AAT level 3 looks like at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have each apprentice gets a number of contacts to work with throughout their delivery. They have a skills coach who they meet with on every single calendar month to do one-to-one support, and that will be around what they need. So what do they need from us? What is it that they've not understood, so we can tailor that support to each individual. On top of that, they also have a specialist trainer who delivers group workshops to them. So our workshops are run on a weekly basis for the level 3. So they will have a weekly workshop that they attend. They last between 2.5 and 3 hours. So that's where they learn all the knowledge and the actual qualification side of things. And then, like I say, on top of that, they meet monthly with their skills coach on a one-to-one basis for any more personalised and tailored support that they may need that wasn't covered in the workshop, or that they think they just need additional support on. So lots of people that they can work with, and lots of knowledge and expertise for them to tap into.
Great. Okay, so really flexible way of studying. Yeah. Obviously, you know, you've got time where you're doing things interactively, studying, Absolutely. You're being led by a specialist trainer, but you've got lots of one-to-one support as well.
Yeah, incredibly. And on top of that, the flexible approach just goes even further with our our learning platform, Bud. So that what that allows is for a learner to see their entire learning plan up front and work through it in a way that works best for them. You know, they can log on as and when they like to complete the activities that are in there. And those activities are set, they can go in and work through them, like I say, in a time that suits them. So we're not dictating that they have to wait for us to be able to complete some work. That flexibility is just there all around.
Brilliant, thanks.
And can I just add a little bit to that, Tim, from my perspective? And you know, both Babington and Granthornton have been working with AAT and with Zoe actually for many years, and I thought it was fantastic and really welcomed the refresh of the programme in the earlier side of the year, because it's just that view of almost, you know, almost not disregarding, but putting the revision of the standards aside, which was only approved this year, but actually knowing, understanding and listening to your clients and to the rest of the organisations. You actually introduced, AAT introduced a lot of changes that we're now seeing other organisations playing a little bit of catch up, which is, for example, the data analytics. Again, for that was massive. So it is now a part of the standard, and we see that very much across. It's a trend, you know, in terms of all the standards are being revised. They are incorporating an element of data analytics, and you know, for us is us in terms of the AAT and Babington programme, because we were able to refresh it earlier on in the year, is something that we've already been testing and introducing and actually improving and getting the feedback and evolving. But from my perspective, that data analytics piece is key in terms of finding the integrity or maintaining the integrity of the data and the ethics behind it, because one can work off a spreadsheet and one can prepare a graph, but actually how we prepare and which data do we include, and making sure that we are comparing apples with apples and, you know, that sort of thing. It takes experience, but it needs to be taught. You know, it's definitely something that one needs to learn, and apprenticeship is definitely the way forward for that. So that, for me, the data analytics is a really welcome part of the curriculum, as well as the knowledge, skills and behaviours, obviously, in general, and the endpoint assessment. But anyway, I'll stop there, because otherwise otherwise I speak for maybe 40 minutes. So yeah, back to you.
It's really interesting how I think in finance, with the apprenticeships we have, we're really lucky, because for each of the standards there's at least one, if not two or three or four professional bodies who are really involved, along with employers, in terms of how these standards are produced. And, you know, as I say, for me, it's a really big step forward that we have the AAT qualification mandated as part of the programme. And I don't know, Zoe, maybe we'll touch on this if we have some time at the end, but I wonder what will happen with the level 4 and level 7 standards. But we're lucky that we have these accountancy bodies, because they drive the quality and the content that goes into these standards. You know, there are other standards where there are not qualifications, and bodies involved who do so much research and outreach with their clients to, you know, what are the trends, what are the things that we should be introducing. So we really are in a really great position with these standards, where we, you know, have such great people working with them alongside the employers to kind of inform the things that should be in it, like as you say, data analytics. So just thinking back then to that list, we also had in there the 9 duties. So Zoe, are there any specific considerations or recommendations that you might make to employers who are looking to hire assistant accountants in light of these new duties?
Yes, I think it is going to be really important for the employers to be spending time with the training providers and reviewing those 9 duties, because those 9 duties have been set so that it sort of details the typical activities that the apprentice needs to be doing in order to be able to demonstrate that core competence within their role. So by looking at what the set duties are, the 9 duties that have been listed in the standard, that the employers put forward as being these are the roles that they would expect somebody as at a level 3 at assistant accountant to be doing, just to kind of see if that maps across to the job description of the vacancy that the employers are recruiting for, or to the job role that the employee is doing if the employer is using the apprenticeship to upskill them, because they do need to be making sure that those duties are within their programme, or they're going to be doing it at some point on the time that they are on the apprenticeship, in order for them to be able to properly collate the evidence that they need to be able to demonstrate that they are doing what they need, they are meeting these knowledge, skills and behaviours. And so it's only if those duties align to what they're actually going to be doing that the apprentices are going to be able to successfully complete the endpoint assessment. So reviewing it and just ensuring that there is opportunity for each apprentice to be carrying out those duties at some point throughout the programme is going to be really important before sign up, before that's done, just making sure that the right employee is on the right level of apprenticeship. But it gives a good guide, it's there, and it's great for a good discussion to be able to have as a starting point, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose the thing to think about is that we're not saying that when an apprentice joins, their job role from day one has to include participation in all of these 9 duties. But it's a progression over what, perhaps say an 18-month period that they might be on the level 3 standard.
Yes.
And they're all, really useful and relevant things that you would expect someone in that kind of position to be doing.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that the Travelers Group were really keen to add into the duties is it's got, for example, in duty 1 is assist with. And that again is that language is reflected in duty 4, where it says assist with the compilation of accounting and financial records. So it isn't that at level 3 the apprentice has the responsibility of doing it or is managing that process, but just the activities that they're doing is assisting and feeding into that, collating of information and maintaining of information. So and again, there are very much examples. Examples as such as, so it will say, such as they're I don't think what kind of such as they've got now, but doing things within sort of reconciliations or tax returns or things, but it's not saying they have to be doing all of those things. It's just an example that they're being given. So some of our employers that initially looked at it kind of said, oh, but I don't have an apprentice that is doing that and that and that. But it's literally just they're there as for examples. They're not saying they have to be doing all of them, but just some form of feeding into the maintaining of the finance and financial accounts. So it'd be just good for employers to be familiar with what those duties are and to have that open discussion with you at Babington as well, just to ensure that there are ways for them to be able to meet those tasks at some point on their programme.
Yeah, and that's discussion very much to have with your training provider, isn't it? To work together to ensure that we're creating job vacancies that are fit for purpose and fit that apprenticeship standard. Ruth, just thinking then about recruitment strategies, do you see this kind of affecting the way that you think employers might recruit for apprentices on this standard?
Well, I think, and listen to you there, so I think it actually creates it creates a bar, doesn't it? I mean, it creates a benchmark and a standard of actually, by the end, you don't have to tick all the boxes before you start, but by the end of the 15 months within the role, then, apprentices will be achieving that level of consistency across the industry and across the board. And I think that's really key. In terms of recruitment, for us, our biggest commitment is in driving diversity and inclusion. So, we have a very structured early careers program and recruiting program, but essentially the principle behind it is trying to go to many different pockets of society to make sure that we can actually get a really broad mix and really different perspectives and ideas. And we're very much welcome and pleased to say that actually just this month and in the last couple of weeks we came, I think, 4th in social mobility. So it's something that we drive very much. And then this sort of early careers apprentices is what we very much base our strategies on. And with that drive of actually trying to achieve that diversity and inclusion, what happens is that you get a big broad mix of raw talent, fantastic potential, but actually quite again, back to that consistency, there might be different starting points. So I think again, back to your duties, that focuses the bar. And yes, in terms from a recruitment perspective, I'm a mother of an 18-year-old as well, who's actually looking to do an apprenticeship, and it's interesting to see sometimes how there is a gap between apprentices looking for apprenticeships and where do they start, and then organisations looking for talent, how do they find them? So from my perspective, regardless how big or small your organisation is or your early careers team might be, thinking about some structured principles in terms of making sure that you find some routes to get to going out there, to make sure that you try and attract a wide variety of talent, from many different places. That's key. And also setting up within the organisation some of the structures to make sure that you get that you give the wider support that the apprentice needs, from that motivation side, from that support side. So people that might think, I don't know, I have a question, I have no idea what they're talking about, but actually how do I ask it? And buddy systems, mentors, coaches, interviews, any support that you can provide to this early career starters, both in the recruitment process as well as once they join the organisation, then I think you can trust in organisations like Babington, for example, to take them through the qualification. They'll do, the training providers will essentially do that part of the role, but the biggest support will come from the line manager and from the support that they'll have around them. And in fact, we've done a little bit of a survey in the market in terms of what were the big, where, from a satisfaction point from the 1 to 5, the apprentices, where do they really feel the need, and as well as the support that they need. And it very much came number 1 from the people manager or line manager and their support team, and then number 2, the training provider. In terms of the two, this is a triad, isn't it? It's that combined circle.
Yeah, very much. So just thinking about one of the last things we wanted to think about was the endpoint assessment. So current or old state was we had an exam from AAT, so we had a synoptic exam, and then we have a professional discussion relating to the portfolio of evidence which the apprentices collate and submit, and that's all owned by AAT. So Zoe, how does it look on the new standard?
So it's similar face value because it's still a portfolio with professional discussion and a test for them to have to do, but actually the approaches to it have really changed. Okay. Ruth was talking about that diversity, and actually that's one of the key things that the Trailblazer group were trying to make sure that they were being very much aware of when they were setting this. So it's changed in the way that the knowledge test is. Just key things like, for example, they would expect the test to be able to be completed within 90 minutes. And that's what it's going to be. It is going to be multiple choice questions. It's still with a lot of information given to them, lots of graphs and charts and financial information that they're going to have to read through. But then picking out from that, applying the principles and the concepts and knowledge that they have gained from doing the qualification and the training on programme. But then having sort of multiple choice through drag and drop and sort of filling in the gaps and things like that. And coming back to the time point is they should be able to complete it all within 90 minutes. But the Trailblazer group have given them, in addition to that, an extra 60 minutes to reflect. So they wanted to remove any type of time pressure that would be on an apprentice of against the clock type of exam, but it's more of a way of just demonstrating their knowledge through answering the questions and giving their best in that time. In addition to that, they've actually made it open book so they can take their textbooks in with them as well, because it's more about reflecting the real working environment that apprentices would be in, because if they're sat, if they're part of a team and they're not sure of something, they've got somebody that they can ask a question to and speak to. And so it was felt that actually having some type of reference material for them to be able to review would be acceptable. Although they can't go on the internet, but it still widened out that approach to be able to take off the exam type pressure, because we know that they'll have already sat those exams and demonstrated they can sit exams by completing their AAT qualification, because they're robustly assessed through that already before they go to Gateway. So that's one of the things that's changed, is with the knowledge test around that. And also their approach to the portfolio has changed too, because previously it was very much like there was people we know from an awarding organisation perspective, we were getting portfolios with 100 pieces of evidence given to us, lots and lots of content and information for us to kind of work through and try and pick out where it met the KSBs. But the apprenticeship standard, or the guidance around portfolio, is that there's a maximum of 10 pieces. So it's 10 quality pieces focused on work product. And IFACE have actually removed a question and answer between a training provider just asking knowledge questions of an apprentice. So that question and answer has been removed, and self-reflection has also been removed as something to be able to put in. So that's no longer allowed within the portfolio under IFACE's new guidance. So one of the key things from an employer perspective is what has been recommended as a really good quality piece of evidence to go into the portfolio is something from their line manager. And Ruth was mentioning about the importance in that relationship with the apprentice and their line manager, that the employer contribution is going to be very highly valued when it goes into the portfolio, of having a witness statement of what they've seen them actually do while they've been on programme for that sort of 12, 15, 18 months that they've been doing the work and the development. And it's what has been observed by the employer is allowed, and seeing whether that's also evidenced through their performance reviews and things like that have happened, of how they've demonstrated particular behaviour, and the employer has seen that and writing that forward. So the employer contribution into those quality pieces, those 10 quality pieces of evidence within the portfolio is going to be really important.
Okay, so there's quite a few changes there then, isn't there? So to the exam from AAT, but then also to that portfolio as well. It feels like perhaps it's going to be a little bit less burdensome, if you're not submitting 100 pieces into a portfolio, but 10 quality pieces. If you're not, the synoptic exam was really different to the types of exam that they'd have done before. Quite time pressured, lots of different kind of aspects to it, but it sounds like it's going to be a different style of exam as well. So Amy, from your point of view, what kind of impact do you think that's going to have on the apprentices and employers as well?
Yeah, and I absolutely think the new endpoint assessment process is much improved. We talk about having that open book assessment, and I think from our perspective, that's going to be so much better for learners who potentially have English as a second language or have additional learning needs, or even just learners that do struggle with that traditional exam sitting, where that time pressure and pressure of not being able to refer to your materials is there. So much welcome from us. In terms of what we've done and what we need to consider with this, we as a training provider went back and made sure that all of our endpoint assessment prep workshops and material was updated to reflect the changes, so that our apprentices can work towards a successful endpoint assessment from day one. We made sure that the new knowledge, skills and behaviours were embedded into the programme, so that they can build that fantastic portfolio that you talk about, Zoe, and have those really good pieces of evidence to put forward. I think something that employers and learners will have to consider with the changes are just around that new approach to the exam, really. Like you say, they get 90 minutes to do the exam, but they then have that additional time for research, prep and reflection. So just ensuring that our apprentices are prepared for that approach and understand how to manage their time in that situation. And also understanding and thinking about, right, well, this is an open book approach. We know you're not allowed to use the internet, but what materials can I take into that exam, and what's going to be the most beneficial for me as a learner to take into that endpoint assessment, and just making sure that they're fully prepared and understanding about how that's going to work. That's me where I see the biggest impact.
Great, thanks, Amy. I'm just noticed the time, so perhaps we'll just have a look and see if we've had any questions come through from those on the call. I can see there's one from Sarah, so we'll pick that one up first. We've got a few moments left, so if there are any other questions that people want to ask, please do pop them in the chat. So Sarah is asking, is there any guidance on how many hours they'll need to spend, apprentices will need to spend gaining experience in those finance disciplines? So I guess we're talking about those duties. So yeah, do we have any guidance in terms of how much kind of evidence or how much time people should be spending on these different duties? Zoe, I might come to you for that one.
On the actual duties that they're doing, it needs to be a significant part, and I think this is the word that I tend to use quite a lot. So it's a significant part of their job role and needs to be on carrying out the duties. But when you look at what the duties are, it does include things like using digital accounting systems safely. So there are some quite generic things in there as well, and undertaking CPD and being responsible for their own professional development. So even though there are 9 duties, it's not they specifically have to be doing this, every day. But I think probably reading through the duties might give some employers a little bit of reassurance that it is quite wide, the activities that they're being asked to do. But still that expectation that the apprentices are being given sufficient time to be able to attend the sessions that Babington have got with those workshops for them, making sure that they're available to have those one-to-one sessions with their skills coaches. So all of that is going to be important, of having, still the development time for that is where you're still looking roughly, I know it's not exactly 20% anymore, but that's kind of still that 20% off the job to be able to develop this is still, something to be mindful of. Yeah,
and Amy, presumably Babington as a training provider, skills coaches are going to be working closely with the apprentices and the employers to provide guidance and make sure we're getting the right, not just the right amount, but the right type of evidence.
Absolutely. All of the activities that are built into the learning plan have really clear instructions about what we're expecting from the apprentice, and also how we're going to support on our side as well. In terms of hours, all of our activities do have the recommended hours built into them as well. So when an apprentice logs on and sees the activity, they know roughly how long that should take them to do. But we will work closely with the apprentice and their line manager to make sure that the evidence they're providing is what's going to get them that grade at the end.
Okay, for me, it's almost got that feel of off-the-job training about it. You hear it and think, oh, is this going to be something difficult? But actually, when you start to look at the specific situation, think about this apprentice within their job role, within their organisation, how are they going to meet it? Actually, you start to see, as long as you've done that kind of work up front to ensure that we're, getting the right people into the right role, then, these are things that should be very much achievable, because they've been, they've been designed by employers to ensure that they are. Don't think we've had any other questions come through. I did just have one that was sent to me yesterday by someone who unfortunately can't attend today, and they were just kind of wondering how do we feel this level 3 program starts to prepare apprentices for the next stage in their career, and perhaps moving on to something like a level 4 program. Ruth, I don't know if you have a view on that.
Yes. Well, I think that actually links up nicely to the question that was there before, and because we have the 9 duties, what employers essentially need to give the apprentices is opportunities to get involved, to have exposure to any of those 9 duties, because as I mentioned earlier, in my view, this raises a bar. With that bar, then it gives a very strong, solid foundation at level 3 to be able to then progress into the level 4 or the level 7, you know, that's the full accountancy accredited professional qualification. Essentially, you might, you know, the level 3 is a fantastic opportunity to, one, get all the right foundations, the really strong foundations for the world of accountancy. But those who actually want to take it farther and make a career out of it, then have the opportunities to progress. And then obviously, by the time that they get to level 7, the exemptions will count, so they won't have to do the whole level 7 because they already have those really strong foundations built at level 3 and level 4. So it would make a really natural progression, and it's essentially it's a really welcome. I really like the way that they've done, you know, the level 3 first, and then the level 4, and then the level 7. Because as long as you've got the really strong foundations right from the start, then immediately it raises the bar for everything else. You know, it's just a really natural progression, I think, in terms of the capabilities in this area.
Great.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. And a really interesting kind of point there, because I suppose I kind of alluded to it slightly at the start, but you know, we're seeing these revisions for level 3. You know, I hope everyone else agrees, but I think everything we're hearing is really positive. We're saying we've taken the last, you know, the lessons learned from the last 5 or 6 years, updating the standard. It's being driven by a qualification. There's more flexibility for training providers to be able to invest in the resources that they need to be able to support apprentices. You know, we're being more prescriptive in terms of the type of things that apprentices should be doing. So these all sound like really positive things, and this is great for level 3. But you know, we're going to see these types of things for level 4 and level 7. Zoe, I don't know if you have a view on something like that.
I hope so.
Yes. Yes. So at the moment, the Trailblazer group for the level 4 and the level 7 is combined, but it's been agreed that, as Ruth has said, the focus will be on the level 4 first, getting that right, adding in the duties, updating the KSBs, and then looking at the assessment plan itself. So the initial part of that work for the level 4 has been carried out. The duties have been added in, the KSBs have been updated, and I actually have a draft copy that we're able to share for employer feedback to see if you can give your opinion then at this point, because it hasn't been fully you know, approved and written off and submitted yet. So it is something that I'd be happy, if you want to share that draft version of the duties and the KSBs for any employer feedback, if you think that is in line with the job role itself. And then the next stage then for the Trailblazer group is for them to look at the assessment and what the EPA will look like. But once that's then been completed, the group then will move on to the level 7 and do the same. So set duties in the same format and template, and yeah, sort of approaching it in that nice progression pathway.
Great. So plenty of work still to do. Sounds like your plate will be full for a bit yet, Zoe. But really good to hear that those things are happening. And you know, as Zoe said, you know, employers, if this is something you want to get involved with, if you want to be involved, then do reach out. You can reach out to me, or you can reach out to Zoe directly, and it'd be great to get people's feedback. I don't know if and I don't think we've had any other questions come in. I think we said we'd run till 11:45, so we have overrun slightly. So apologies for that, and thank you everybody for staying with us. If anybody has any more questions, my email address is on the bottom of the screen there, so you know, you're very welcome to get in touch with me. I think Zoe's just popped her address in the chat panel as well, so you can certainly get in touch with Zoe. As we said at the start, we've recorded the session this morning, so we'll get that circulated to everybody, and there'll be some other bits of additional material that Martin might share as well, in terms of what the programme guides and things like that. Zoe, sorry, you've got your hand up.
I have just thought actually that the Institute for Apprenticeships is always looking for new employers to come on board to help to influence and give their input and changes to the apprenticeship standards. So there is opportunity to join the Trailblazer group, the level 4 and the level 7, if that's something any employers are interested in doing. The commitment is it's for about an hour once a month. and most of the actions that come off of it sits with the training providers and the awarding organisations. So it's mostly the time of coming and attending a Teams meeting once a month with your input, and then bringing any insights from the teams that you work with as well. So if anyone is interested in that, as Tim said, my email address is there. It'd be great to have you come and join the Trailblazer group.
Great, thanks, Zoe. Lovely. Okay, well, I'm going to draw the session to a close. So thanks ever so much for being able to join us this morning. Thank you to our panel, so to Amy, Zoe, and to Ruth. Hopefully you found this interesting and it's been useful. As I say, if you've got any follow-up questions or anything you want to discuss, you can pop me an email, or you can speak to your Babington account manager. So thanks very much, everybody.